Hi, welcome to Talking Books and Stuff, the program that talks all about books and writing and stuff. Here's your host, Dennis Rimmer.
And hello again. Welcome back to Talking Books and Writing and Stuff, your favorite podcast, I know. And today we're talking with Larry Stone from the Seattle Times newspaper. He's mainly a sports writer. We're going to talk about Edgar Martinez, and Larry helped with a book about Edgar Martinez. We'll get to that in a minute. But first of all, Larry Stone from Seattle, what's your favorite coffee down there?
Well, you're not going to believe this, but I do not drink coffee. I've never had a cup of coffee in my life. I had a sip once when I was a teenager. I didn't like it, and I've never gone back.
I was just thinking when I asked the question, oh no, he's going to be one of those guys who drinks tea or something. So I was going to ask.
Sorry to disappoint the stereotype. But,
that's right. I was going to say, which one do you like best? Starbucks, Seattle's best, all that kind of stuff, but it didn't work. So, yeah. Are you a beer or whiskey man?
No, I think you're 0 for 2 now. I'm just boring old. I do drink a lot of iced tea.
Okay.
I will drink an occasional beer, but I wouldn't call myself a connoisseur by any means.
Okay. Yeah. Well, we got that out of the way, the important stuff. Larry Stone from the Seattle Times. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Larry. Where were you born and raised and educated, that kind of stuff?
Sure. I was born in Whittier, California, Southern California, outside of Los Angeles, and grew up there. And then when I was 13, my dad worked for NASA and got transferred to Huntsville, Alabama, because that's where their Space Flight Center is. And so I went to high school in Alabama, very shocking culture shock for a kid from California. Then I ended up moving back to California for my senior year, and I went to Berkeley, University of California, Berkeley, for my degree, and that's where I got into journalism, writing for the Daily Cal, the school paper, and I kind of fell in love with it. And I've been a sports writer for newspapers since 1979, so this is my 42nd year.
And when did you arrive in Seattle then? It wasn't right away, obviously.
No, my first job out of college, I just sent out mass applications, and I got a nibble from Yakima, Washington. Oh. It was the largest paper that was interested in me, the largest daily paper. So I ended up moving to Yakima, and that brought me to the Northwest. Met my wife there, and was in Yakima for 6 years, and then I got a job covering the Mariners for the Bellevue Journal-American, a suburban paper in the Seattle area. And then I got hired in the Bay. I moved back to the Bay Area for 10 years, covering the San Francisco Giants for the Santa Rosa Press-Democrat and the San Francisco Examiner. And then in 1996, the Seattle Times had an opening for a Seahawks beat writer, so I applied and got that job. Oh. And I've been at the Seattle Times ever since, 24 years. I ended up only covering the Seahawks for 1 year and moved to baseball, which is kind of my love. And I covered baseball for about 20 years, or maybe more like 17. And then I became the sports columnist in 2013. So I'm about 7-8 years being the columnist here.
So for us uneducated folks, what's the difference between a reporter and a columnist, in your opinion?
Well, in my opinion is a good way to put it, because a columnist is an opinion writer, basically. You sort of have carte blanche to opine on whatever's happening in the sports world, and whereas a beat writer, you're more, you're reporting what's going on, the transactions, and sort of thing. If there's a trade, the beat writer writes the mechanics of the trade, and the columnist writes his opinion on whether it was a good trade or not. So a little more freedom, which I like. And instead of just doing baseball, I'm doing all the sports now. Seahawks, the University of Washington teams, which are very popular here. Still the Mariners. and we're getting hockey, getting hockey this year.
That's right.
So that's not a sport I'm particularly versed on, but I'm trying to learn all that I can.
Okay. Well, what you have to do is watch Slapshot.
Flat Shot, okay.
Slapshot with Paul Newman, and it came out in '77.
Oh, Slapshot. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I've seen that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, there you go. Because
all I need to know.
Every hockey team on every bus since the dawn of Slapshot plays it on the bus. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everybody will know what you're talking about when you put on the foil and all that kind of stuff. And
yeah,
old time
right.
hockey, Dick Clapper, Eddie Shore, that kind of stuff. So newspapers. Now, I've been a newspaper fan since I was like 7 or 8, and I used to write a column for about 14 years for the Bellingham Herald when I lived in Bellingham. Mm-hmm. What's going to happen with newspapers, in your opinion? I hope you have good news, but I doubt it.
Yeah, not too much. My son is a senior at Western Washington University, so I had been spending a lot of time in Bellingham, but now he's spending a senior year living at home because of the pandemic. But well, you know, I'm fortunate enough to have spent my entire career on every paycheck I've ever gotten in my life has been from a newspaper. I don't think many people will be able to say that moving forward. I mean, it's just newspapers are sort of like the horse and wagon. Time has sort of passed them by. There's other ways that people get their news. I think newspapers will be able to pivot to online, as they are already doing and have been doing for years. But it's a tricky economic model because the revenue largely comes from the inserts into the newspaper, the grocery ads and the Macy's ads and all that. And I don't know if the newspapers, that's the eternal question, is can they make it economically viable to not print the paper? Because once you stop printing the newspaper, a lot of the costs go down, the delivery and the production. It's much cheaper to produce it online, but you've got to get somehow people to pay for that, and online ads have not really been as lucrative as you would think. So there's a subscription model, I think, sort of like The Athletic.
Yep.
It's a sports site which seems to be thriving with a subscription model, and the Seattle Times is doing very well with a subscription model. So I'm moderately optimistic that it will keep going, but I think the printed product is probably an endangered species.
Well, that's too bad. We're talking with Larry Stone from the Seattle Times. We're going to be talking with Mariner great and Baseball Hall of Famer Edgar Martinez in a moment. But I want the newspapers to be what they were 20 years ago. I don't want to have to look on a tiny screen to search 19 different sites to find Major League Baseball transactions or who got sent to the minors and who went somewhere else and what the golf scores were and things like that. It just drives me nuts. I want somebody else to assemble all of that, print it off for me, and send it to my house. And the comics, I go to I have get the headlines daily from the Seattle Times, and I check the comics on Sundays because our paper locally, the Daily, is now down to Monday they don't print, so it's Tuesday through Saturday, and then when we're in Bellingham, we have a place in Maple Falls we go to all the time. The Bellingham Herald wants $1.50 for 10 pages, and I just quit buying it except for Sunday for all the flyers. So I don't know. I would like newspapers to go big, go back to the future, go back to what they were, print 80 pages a day and kind of try to sell it that way, and then use the newspaper to direct ads to the website. But who listens to me? I'm just a radio guy. So.
Well, I'm with you, Dennis, but unfortunately, the only people who still want to pick up a newspaper are people in I'm not sure how old you are, but I have a feeling you're in my age range. I'm 60 plus.
Well,
and
yeah. I'm 70 plus, but we're the ones with all the money. We're the ones who like to read newspapers. We're the ones, it's a growing segment of the population, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, well, we can debate this over iced tea for years, I guess, and never get anywhere. So we're with Larry Stone is with us here on Talking Books, etc., and we'll get to the meat of the matter now. It's Edgar Martinez. Edgar, an autobiography. It's by Edgar Martinez and Larry Stone. It's from Triumph Books. How'd you get involved in that project, Larry?
Well, in 2000, way back in 2000, I was assigned, actually, I'm sorry, 2001. Alex Rodriguez had signed with the Texas Rangers, and they were playing their first game in San Juan, Puerto Rico. They were trying to expand the international aspect of baseball. So my paper sent me, and while I was there, I decided I would do a story on Edgar's hometown in Dorado, Puerto Rico. And so Edgar cooperated and, set me up with relatives and stuff. So I went to his town and wrote a big story about his upbringing, and it just fascinated me, and it kind of always stuck with me. And then when he became the Hall of Fame type player that he became, I thought that a book on his life would be appropriate. So I approached him in spring training one year. He was the hitting coach. It was 3 years ago, and he was his Hall of Fame. He was getting close to the Hall of Fame, but he wasn't in yet. So I said, I'd like to do your autobiography, help you with it. And we were standing on a backfield in Peoria, where the Mariners trained, Peoria, Arizona, and he kind of thought about it for a second. He said, okay. So that was it.
That was it.
Okay.
Well,
so that season, he was the hitting coach, so he was out on the road a lot with the Mariners, and I wasn't traveling at the time with the Mariners. So when they were on homestands, I would go out to his house, for an hour or two session where I would just query him on his life. We went sort of chronologically through his upbringing, his early career, his blossoming into a star, and all the various aspects. And I taped it and transcribed it, and basically at the end of the year, I had all I needed to tell his life story, and I basically put it down in his words, and we kind of collaborated on that. I would send him chapters, and he would tell me what he liked and what he didn't like, and we'd work on it, and eventually we had a book.
Yes. And Triumph Books seems to specialize in that sports things. I have a chat up on our website with Rob Vanstone, who did a book for Triumph about 101 favorite Saskatchewan Roughriders, but they're not my favorite team, so I didn't care. It's BC Lions and Seattle Seahawks for me when it comes to that. So yeah, they seem to be into that. So obviously you approached them, or they approached you?
No, I got an agent, and she sent it out to all sorts of publishers. And, what we were just talking about with newspapers goes for the book publishing business too. It's floundering as well. And I think, 10 years earlier, I think it would have been scooped up by a Random House or a Simon & Schuster or one of the big houses. But there's just, sports books aren't selling that much. So it was a hard sell, and Triumph was a book that, as you said, specialized in sports, and they were the ones that came through with the best offer, and they did a nice job with it, and they did a good job promoting it and everything. So I'm happy with the relationship.
Yep, that's wonderful. We're with Larry Stone, Seattle Times newspaper, a sports columnist now, talking about his book Edgar. It's an autobiography about Edgar Martinez. So the casual listener who's not a big baseball fan would not know much about Edgar, and he wasn't an overnight star in the big leagues, was he?
No, he wasn't. There's so many points at which his career looked really doomed. Even when he was growing up, he was not scouted at all. His cousin Carmelo Martinez became a major leaguer, and he was the one that everybody came to Dorado to see, not Edgar. And he actually graduated high school with no teams, and this was back when Puerto Rico was not part of the Major League Draft as it is now. It was sort of like the Dominican Republic. You signed as a free agent, and once they wanted to get you young, they could sign you when you turned 16, and when you got to college age, you pretty much were done as a prospect. And so he went off to college thinking that he was not going to play baseball. He was studying to be a businessman, and then a friend of his said the Mariners were holding a tryout, and he didn't want to go because he was going to college and working and everything, but he decided to go on a whim almost. He'd done a lot of these tryouts and hadn't gone anywhere, and he was kind of fed up with them. But the Mariners, their scout named Marty Martinez, who's no relation, but really liked what he saw, and they signed him to a very small contract, $5,000 or $3,000, and off he went to Bellingham. Actually,
that's right. Yeah. And yet,
that's where he started his career with the baby Mariners, they called them.
The baby M's, yep.
yeah. So and then he hit 163, I think. I don't have I used to know this by heart, but it's been a while since I've conjured this up. But he hit very low his first year, and he thought he was going to be cut and sent home, but they kept him, and he gradually showed what kind of hitter he was. And then another obstacle was the Mariners had a really good third baseman named Jim Presley, and Edgar kept winning batting titles with Calgary in the PCL, Pacific Coast League, and yet there was no space for him. He'd go up and down between the major leagues and Calgary, and it wasn't until really the early 1990s that he stuck and became a batting champion, two-time batting champion, and eventually a Hall of Famer.
And his lifetime batting average was, according to what I have in front of me, .312, but injuries, he probably could have been a bit higher than that if it wasn't for those dang injuries he had all through the career, it seems like. Yeah,
and one in particular, which it was the one that really kind of turned his career around. It happened in Vancouver.
I remember, yes.
The Mariners played an annual exhibition game at the ballpark there, and it was not a good field. It was, and it had been torn up by a concert, and Edgar was playing, and he was on first base, and there was a hit and run, and he took off on the really soft, bad turf, and his hamstring popped, and he was really never the same again after that, health-wise, and that's when he became a DH. That kind of led to his becoming a DH, and it turned out to be the perfect position for him. But he had trouble with his hamstrings the rest of his career.
Right. So he took 10 ballots, apparently, or something like that, for Edgar Martinez to get into the Hall of Fame. Where did you stand when his name first showed up on the ballots?
Well, yeah, I was a strong proponent. I wrote lots of columns saying why he should be in. When he started, you got to be on the ballot for 15 years. And then after his 6th year, they changed the rules, and you only got to be on for 10 years. So he had to kind of speed it up, but the support really started to grow for him. After 6 years, he got in his 6th year on the ballot with 4 to go. He got 27% of the vote, and you need 75% to get in. So it looked hopeless. I mean, I pretty much gave up hope. He certainly gave up hope, but then it was really kind of a miracle. His support just changed after that. There was a lot of prominent writers. Jay Jaffe of Sports Illustrated and now Fangraphs wrote some really influential articles touting Edgar, and other writers. Influential writers wrote some essays saying why he should be a Hall of Famer, and his support just kind of gradually grew. And then his 9th year, he was at 70%, and it was pretty much a fait accompli at that point. And in his last year, he went in with over 80% of the vote.
Excellent. And I guess some of the arguments earlier on was that he was, quote-unquote, only a designated hitter, But then, of course, people thought, well, people are only relief pitchers and they get in, so why not a DH? Is that kind of where you stood?
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing that kind of hurt him was what we were earlier talking about. He didn't really break into the major leagues as a regular until he was in his mid-20s, so he didn't get some of those. He didn't reach those milestone numbers that a lot of voters look for. He didn't have 3,000 hits. He didn't have 500 homers. But, another thing that helped him was that I think writers became more sophisticated in what they're looking for. It wasn't just, wins for a pitcher don't mean as much as they used to. There's a lot of analytics and sabermetrics, new ways of looking at the numbers. And the closer you looked at Edgar's numbers and the deeper you dove into them and looked at them with an analytical eye, the better and better they looked. And that's what really helped him, I think. And it helped him overcome the stigma of being a DH for sure. Because if you WAR, wins above replacement, that already penalizes you for being a DH. There's a built-in penalty, and if you look at his WAR, it was right up there with anybody in the Hall of Fame.
Edgar Martinez is the topic of our conversation today. Baseball Hall of Famer, played all his career for the Seattle Mariners. Are there any other Mariners that spent their entire career with Seattle? I'm trying to think of some. Jay Buhner, maybe? I don't know.
No, Jay Buhner came up with the Yankees.
Oh, right.
Of course, their big guys, Griffey, Randy Johnson, and A-Rod, they all left.
Mm-hmm.
Felix Hernandez looked like he was going to be a lifetime Mariner, and then he went off to. He still has only played for the Mariners because he went and signed with the Braves last year, but opted out after COVID, so he's still never played for another team besides the Mariners with a long career, but he did sign with the Braves, and I don't know, he's not signed with anyone now, so it could turn out that that Felix Hernandez only plays for the Mariners because there's a good chance he may be through. But as far as prominent players, I think Edgar, and I think that adds to his popularity. I don't think there's any Mariner player in their history probably who is as popular as Edgar, sort of just unreserved affection. Griffey left, and some people hold that against him. Certainly A-Rod is hated because he took the money and ran. There's affection for Randy Johnson, but I don't think it's the same as Edgar. I think he might be number one.
I think so. I hope so. that just popped into my mind, and as we're looking at his stats here online, unfortunately, Randy Johnson, yes, came from the Expos. Are the Expos, or is Montreal ever going to get a team again?
I do think so. Yes. Baseball is eventually going to expand, I think, and I think Montreal will be at the top of the list. Portland is making a serious bid for a team. Charlotte has a group together trying to get a team. They have for as long as I can remember. Some people have tossed out Vancouver. I don't see it.
Nope.
The Mariners don't want a team, I don't think, either in Vancouver or in Portland because they draw from both those areas. Mexico City is another area that I've heard mentioned as possible expansion. But when they do expand, I would think Montreal would be very high on the list.
Well, Montreal has a long baseball history with professional teams going. Well, Jackie Robinson started his major league career there, or not major league, but baseball career,
sure.
In the quote-unquote white leagues with the Montreal Royals way back when. So, yeah, we can hope so. That's all we can hope for. Edgar Martinez is who we're talking about here as I ramble on with Larry Stone from the Seattle Times. The book is Edgar, an Autobiography. So when we're talking about baseball players, what kind of do they have nicknames? Because I'll talk to you about hockey nicknames in a moment. So apparently it was either Gar or Pappy. But do baseball players have sort of nicknames they go by, or not so much?
Yeah, a lot of them do. Edgar was known as Pappy, which was it's a term of affection in the Latin community, and the more famous, obviously, was David Ortiz, Big Papi, but
yes.
but Edgar was Papi before Ortiz was Big Papi. As a matter of fact, Ortiz began in the Mariners organization as a minor leaguer, and the Mariners ended up trading him to the Twins, and then the Twins released him, and he signed with the Red Sox and he'll be on the Hall of Fame ballot next year for the first time.
Yeah,
but his name was actually David Arias when he was in the Mariners organization, and he changed it to David Ortiz when he got traded. But Randy Johnson's famously the big unit. Ken Griffey Jr. was the kid.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of nicknames. Usually they're just like Brett Boone is Booney. A lot of the stuff is very unimaginative. Just add a Y to the end of the name.
I was just going to say that's the same thing with hockey players. If you cover any, I hate to say it, Kraken games. I think that's a terrible name, and I wish the team had gone to Quebec City, not Seattle. But that's beside the point. Yeah, it'll be like Larry Stone would be Stoner or Stonesy. Yeah. I would have been Rimsey. There was a hockey coach in Bellingham for the Bellingham Ice Hawks when they were in the BC Junior Hockey League. His last name was Sear, so of course his nickname was Searsy. Like, that's longer than his real name. Like, I don't understand it. So, yeah, they're not too imaginative up in the hockey world either. But anyway, so Larry Stone has been with us. We've been talking about baseball and about Larry's newspaper career and about newspapers. But for baseball fans here, there, and everywhere, if you're looking for an interesting baseball book, it's Edgar, an autobiography. It's by Edgar Martinez and Larry Stone. Larry, do you have any other books in mind or in the works?
Well, I would like to do more books. It's kind of hard when you have a full-time job. You just sort of have to write around the spare time. But I'm approaching retirement age. So eventually, I think I would like to concentrate more on books, and I can't give you anything specific right now, but I hope to have another book or two in me.
Larry, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Let's hope that if and when the Expos come back, or whatever name they choose, Montreal Kraken, how about that one? So perhaps we'll see. I keep hoping that it would be a Toronto-Seattle World Series, but that would never happen because they're in the same league. So maybe the Mariners will finally get to the World Series, and maybe they'll play a team from Montreal, who knows. Larry Stone, thank you very much for your time today, and have fun with your tea.
All right. Thanks, Dennis. My pleasure.
Thank you for visiting with us today. This is Talking Books and Stuff with Dennis Rimmer. Contact him at dennis@talkingbooks.tk. Thank you, and may all the good news be yours. Oh, and don't forget to check out his book, The Great Canadian Notebook, available across Canada and at amazon.ca.